This is Babe Philosophy,
a podcast where questions matter more than answers, where liminal spaces are revered, and where magic is practical.
We are your hosts, Meli Wolf and Liv Wickedly.
Welcome to Babe Philosophy.
Babe Philosophy.
We're back, and today we are talking about when, if ever, it's okay to be selfish.
I love this whole topic so much.
I do too, because I think that there's a lot to unpack in the actual definition of the word.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a good place to probably start is like, how are we defining selfishness? And yeah, maybe let's start there.
Yeah. So in my experience of the word selfish, I actually feel like the overall message that I've gotten is selfish is like a catch-all for one, when somebody doesn't like that you're doing something for you instead of them. Two, if you're actually doing something where you're like centering yourself at the expense of other people. And then three, if you're not agreeable, then you're selfish. So I actually think we've kind of, and maybe those are like the three things that popped in my head. There's probably more nuance to like what we've shoved into the term selfish.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually think those three things, none of those three things aren't actually what selfishness is. I think it's closer to say that selfishness is the kind of opposing pole to selflessness, that they're the same energy. And the selflessness would be melting completely into I am one with the collective. We are a unit, total we thinking, complete
Mm-hmm.
collective we thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you go to the other end of the spectrum, selfishness would be like very deeply in and devoted to the individual, the self, the knowing of the self, being very full of that energy and experience. So like embodying the I thinking. And I actually think we want some combo of those things where we dance and ebb and flow with them and have access to both ends, not this you're selfless and you're a good person. And anytime you focus on yourself, you're a bad person, which is kind of the message that I've gotten. Anytime you focus on yourself, you're a bad person.
Yeah, it's so interesting because as I was listening to you speak and as I was listening to you get into each one of those words, before you even got into like what the word meant, when you said selfish, I was like, ooh, negative connotation. And then when you said selfless, I was like, ooh, positive connotation. And that's so wild to think about because I agree with you. I think they are of the same energetic frequency in that they are of opposing poles. And neither one of them is necessarily holistic, is not like a
Mm-mm.
holistic approach, so to speak. So if you're way too far on the selfless end of the pole, you are the bypasser, the martyr, victim. And then if you're on the selfish side of the pole, then you are the dictator, aggressive, disagreeable bitch. Um, so, and then I'm thinking about, okay, do we have a word that describes the middle ground? Like, is there a word in the English language that you can think of off the top of your head that would describe and offer the connotation of not like unpopular belief, let's pitch this, but like that exists already and has this connotation that lands somewhere in the middle?
I don't know if we do like colloquially agree on one. I tend to think of humility because humility to me is honoring, is taking from the experience of the self, so sitting within the self and then extending the self beyond yourself, but not at the exclusion of yourself. Whereas I think selflessness is totally excluding yourself entirely. Like you're not a part of it at all.
Right.
So humility is usually what I imagine and think of.
Yeah, I feel like that's a great one. And along with that, too, when you said that, I thought of equanimity. I feel like we always just
Yeah.
come back to
Mm-hmm.
that word. Um,
I feel like to actually embody humility, you have to embody equanimity.
yes,
Like they like kind of go together. Like peace and love, those things go together. Yeah.
totally. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so For the sake of, because of where we're kind of starting at baseline in the like per society's standards of selfish is bad, selfless is good. I feel like what we're going to do in this podcast is shift those that narrative on its head and kind of edge towards selfishness as good and selflessness as not as good, just not because they're inherently good or bad, but because our society tends to skew in the opposite direction, where
Hmm.
are more biased towards selflessness and more averse to selfishness as a collective, which results in this like martyr victim wounding. So I would like to propose a reality where if we kind of shifted our gears and moved a little bit more into selfishness and a little bit out of selflessness, we can like go into the details and correct the nuance later, but like what would that look like in a like what does a world look like when we start to say, okay, it's okay to be selfish?
Yeah, no, this is actually great because I've had this part of the reason that I even talk about things like this or have made the choices I've made in my career or have pursued my life the way I've pursued it is because I have this genuine belief. And the more I look at the world, the more my bias is confirmed that if we as individuals were taught how to take excellent care of ourselves, first and foremost, to truly fill our cup, then all the world's problems would be solved. We wouldn't have war. We wouldn't have poverty. We wouldn't have people fighting and murdering and killing and all the things because everyone would be so well resourced and know how to fill their own cup up. And I think most people, when their cup is truly full and they're truly resourced, they overflow into others. And then people who maybe aren't as super overflowy, at least don't have to become these like super aggressive dictator, take over the whole world type people. And I think there's less of them natively in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just always felt like we could save the world if each individual person just stopped fucking looking for somebody to save them and started saving themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like that I truly believe that. So I'm like, okay, how do we give people the tools and the knowledge and the whatever? And that's part of why I wanted to do this podcast. That's part of both of our vision of this podcast is like, how do we make these tools that you and I have to fill our cups and to undo, I think, the damaging aspects of selflessness, like people pleasing.
Yep.
How do we offer those to people so that they can self-source and fill their cup? So for me, I'm like, in a world where we are being selfish and really thinking of selfishness as filling our own cup, like self-fullness. If we think of it
I
in
like
that
that.
term,
Wait, hold on. Let's do that. Let's make that a
self-fullness,
word. Yeah.
yeah. Self-fullness, that's really what I think ultimately we're like getting at is like, if if you don't even know who you are and you don't know what your needs are and you don't know how to get those needs met, you become a burden on
Yeah.
everybody around you because now you're going to become an energy vampire because you are going to need to externally source everything. And
Yep.
then you sit in your woe is me victim story feeling justified that you're not living up to your potential. You're not actually here sharing your gifts with the world in the way that probably could be deeply beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
You may actually be tearing down other people, causing energy
Mm-hmm.
leaks for them, distracting them from their greatness. Like I just see that the whole world, we can point at the people in power and the persecutors. There are so much less of them. There are fewer persecutors in the world by a disgusting margin than there are victims. And if we stopped acting like motherfucking victims because we're not resourced and I don't have this and my wounding that and this person got promoted over me and I'm jealous of her body and all those stupid things that really just don't matter because we're
Yeah.
so busy being martyrs.
Yeah.
If we fucking stopped that shit and we all chose to be like Jesus, like actually embody that shit and do it, and it wasn't just one Jesus who saved the world, it was millions. I'm just saying I see victimization as the problem in our world, and I think the root of that shit is I have to be selfless. So we completely bypass the self and then wait for somebody else to save us. And that's a problem.
Yeah, I think that's a really great perspective to kind of take when you're looking at, like you were saying before, war and all of these situations that potentially wouldn't even happen if we were all self caring humans. And it's almost looking at it kind of like the way we looked at like the what was the episode where we talked about addiction and like
Conscious
that it's not
coping,
a
yeah.
substance that's bad, it's the actual like the person, the energetic frequency that the person's coming to the substance with that makes the thing bad. And it's like it's not the actual byproducts that are the problem. Like the war is not the problem. The fact that we are not able to fill our own cups is the problem. So it's like taking a step further back, deeper down to really address what is actually going on here. And I think you're absolutely right. If we could help people understand that they are never a victim of anything unless they decide that they are, then there would be so many more self-sufficient people walking around this world. And I don't mean self-sufficient as able to give themselves everything that they need, because that's a nuanced piece of selfishness that isn't, it's not black and white. If I'm self-sufficient, it doesn't mean that I get everything done by myself and I'm a single operating unit that doesn't need the help of anybody or anything. It just means that I know how to source from within and not need sourcing externally to the point where I'm not okay if I don't get it, right? There's always a way to be okay by accessing what I have within myself. Yeah, that's that's a good one. That's a good one. I feel like it'd be worthwhile to kind of put a little bit of context on the experiences that we're having and as people in this process and like where we came from, because
Mm-hmm.
there's certain conditioning, because people are like, I'm not that way, maybe, or maybe they're like, I'm this way and I don't know why. And it's like, well, let's unpack like how this happens to us as humans that are a part of a very collective wound that it's very common, like in the way that we're parented, come out the other side with just a crazy affinity for being a victim. Do you have
Yeah.
um maybe you can share your story?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, part of the reason I have so much conviction around this is because of where I come from and being a massive fucking victim who couldn't take any feedback or any criticism or la 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 la, because my ego was just so stinking fragile for such a long time because I didn't want to be misperceived.
Mm.
And that's something that I think is interesting to look at when we look at the people pleasing, right? So I think that that is maybe like a relatively universal experience, at least in our culture, that people can understand, even if they don't have the experience, that they've seen it. And it's like when we're really young, and I'm just even thinking of in my childhood, even in school, it's like you have to be nice, you have to be polite, right? And nice and polite don't, while they have their place, and I'm not, those are not bad things, they lack depth and nuance, right? So those require you to show up externally to be perceived in a specific way, right? So if I'm being trained to be nice and polite, what I'm actually being trained to do is to keep the calm in the room, make sure the people who meet me are pleased with me, that they feel comfortable with me, that I'm not upsetting to them in any way whatsoever, and that I'm also in a lot of ways tacitly agreeing to social norms and socialization that I might not even have a full grasp of, that nobody is speaking in the room. So now I actually have to be quiet and observe other people a lot and anticipate their needs and their discomforts and read their micro expressions and pay attention to the tone of their voice. Like I have to pay attention to all of these things to discern, have I caused upset in the room? Have I done anything to be disruptive? Da, 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 da. Now, like from the outside looking in, I think it's really great that we're like, the fact that we have a people pleasing epidemic is because there's a level of care. There's a level of care that we have, that we're treating people well, and that people aren't running around in total chaos and volatility, and that we are making agreements in rooms so we can be productive and so we can have conversations and so everybody in the room is heard. Like there's a lot of really beautiful intentions in it. But for me, it's so skewed to the selflessness. And I think it's skewed that way out of fear. And I think the primary fear would be being arrogant, And maybe this is so I just from me and my lexicon and how I look at the world, arrogance is actually the problem that I think we're combating. And I think we equate arrogance and selfishness. I think we think that those are the same thing. And
Yeah.
those two things certainly can go together. And if you are being arrogant, the likelihood that your selffulness is coming off distorted or causing negative impact around you is high.
Yep.
But arrogance is the centering of the self, right? So it's the aperture is doop, and you literally can't see, you don't have an awareness outside of you. Now, arrogance is a shadow frequency state that requires reflection from somebody else. If my aperture is like this, it's not because I necessarily chose it to be. It's because I literally don't know that it's like that. I don't know to open it. I'm not aware of myself.
Mm.
So we actually rob people of the capacity to become aware of their arrogance when we need to keep everything nice and polite. So, for example, if I'm 10 years old in a room and there's a 12-year-old there who is picking on another girl, and I go to step in for this other girl, and we get into a squabble, and then I go end up in the principal's office and I get lumped in with the person who was doing the bullying because I shouldn't be disruptive at all, right? Like I
Mm.
shouldn't be fighting or participating at all.
Mm.
But what I was trying to do was point out this kid's arrogance and be like, hey, like actually there are other ways to look at these things. But because nice and polite means no conflict, no conflict, no disagreement, you have to be disagreeable. Now I'm in trouble. So now I've learned it's not okay to stick up for somebody. I'm going to get in trouble if I stick up for somebody. Nice and polite is going to keep me my freedom. And I'm 10 and all I want to do is color and play with my dolls and get straight A's and good conduct so that way when I go home I get to do what I want to do, right? I mean, this is literally me as a kid.
Mhm.
I started learning to sacrifice my values, not care about injustice, just sit quietly in the room because all I want to do is go do what I want to do when I get home. And if I'm in trouble, I'll be grounded and I won't be able to. So you're going to take my freedom away if I'm not nice and agreeable, if I'm not a people pleaser. And I think that's a huge problem because now we as kids can't socialize each other into understanding arrogance, into understanding empathy, into understanding humility. We can't actually teach each other in these ways. I could keep going, but I feel like I've like said a lot, so I'm gonna stop
Yeah,
there.
no,
That's just
that's
like from
great.
my, yeah.
And I feel like that's something that is so it I don't know if what you think about this, but I think that we're much more prone to coming out, into out of our childhood into our adulthood as people pleasers, martyrs, bypassers, like shadow expressions of selflessness
Mm-hmm.
in the society. I know that that's true for me. I know that's true for my partner Matt, and I think that it can happen in so many different ways. But at the end of the day, it's like whether it's you have to be you're trained to be a certain way to make people around you happy, or you're trained to be a certain way to like keep your family dynamic cohesive because you're the glue of the family, or you're trained to be a certain way because you want to be well liked and popular, or you're trained to be a certain way because you don't want to lose your freedom, you don't want to be punished. It's like we're constantly taught bypass whatever's true for you, bypass whatever's true for you, bypass whatever's true for you because you don't want to deal with the consequences of expressing your truth. And yeah, I have my own version of that, which was, I mean, kind of similar to yours, Mama. Is like I was always being told to be quieter, stop making such a mess, be more soft, be more sweet, be more this, be more that, or go to your room. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
it was like this ultimatum of being self expressed or going to my room. So it was like, okay, well, I'm not going to express myself. I'm not going to do what I actually want. I actually was a child that rebelled against that quite a bit. So, but I still, on some level, harbor a lot of I'm supposed to be a certain way. I'm supposed to be a certain way. And I know that you have that. I know that my partner has that. I feel like everybody that I know has that. And then I feel like what happens is we come into the world and we live as adults and we start doing life as bypassers of ourselves. And then we have this moment, was like this come to Jesus eureka moment where we're like, oh, I fucking hate my life because I'm living a life that is built for pleasing others.
Yo, that's the number one regret of the dying and a huge part of why I started becoming selfish. What you
Yes.
just said, that's the number one regret of the dying.
Yeah. Yes, dude. And then, but then here's the fucking crazy thing. And I know I've done this. I feel like I know that my partner Matt has done this because I've been in the face of it. It's like once we realize that we've been in the martyr bypasser role, we're like, oh no, hell no, fuck this shit. I'm gonna fucking do whatever the fuck I want. Fuck everybody. And then you become this like defiant, self absorbed, like tantrum throwing adult that's like, no, I'm not gonna do what anybody tells me to do. Fuck everybody. And then you swing like it's like an overcorrection into the like, I come first, fuck what everybody else wants zone, which is also not ideal.
Yeah, it's not ideal. And I kind of think it's necessary, though. I think we have to swing. Like, you can't know where middle is if you don't know where the other side is.
For sure. I think it's definitely okay to swing. But it's like not a good place to stay
Yeah, I
either.
agree. And also,
It's
I think you just bringing awareness to people like, hey, you're going to want to swing to the other side and just stay as conscious as you can when you
yeah,
do so you don't turn into this total monster.
right. And that's the period of time where we're like maybe burning bridges a little bit, maybe going through some breakups, maybe doing some, maybe doing some like destructive stuff, which, like you said, maybe has to happen in order to find center, right? I feel like that happened with me and Max. We broke up and it was like Defiance City. And then we kind of like came to center and we're like, oh, okay, actually, maybe there is room for you in the space where there is also room for me. It's like, it's not because before in 1.0 of our relationship, it was like I surrender myself to you to the point where I don't have to be anything authentic to myself. And then we transitioned into this like, no, fuck this. This isn't working for me. I come first. You fit if you fit. You fit where you can. I'm taking care of me. And then we broke up. And then we came back into the container and we were like, okay, maybe there's room for both of us here, which I think is kind of the path of discovering the authentic self and discovering where selfishness is actually there is a healthy balance of selfishness that's absolutely required for the most authentic expression of yourself to come through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's got to vary from person to person. Like, I think some people need a lot more me focus to be their best selves, and some people just need a little bit. I think we all have to kind of discover what that is
For ourselves.
individually. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm even just thinking about that swing you're talking about, right? When you go from like total watery, spineless jellyfish, selfless, and then you swing really hard into rugged individual. Nobody could tell me nothing. We're always doing it my way. Like, I just feel like that is there's got to be a common shadow expression there that's just attached to that energy, right? Like, I feel like it's you're expressing the same shadow just from two different sides of it. And when you I don't even know necessarily what shadow it is. My first thought was it is the arrogance, right? Because even if you're super selfless, your aperture is such that you're not actually seeing the negative impact that you're having by choosing to be
Right.
a martyr. And then you swing to the other side, and now it's like inverted, where it's like all you can see is the ways in which other people are taking your sovereignty.
Yeah. Like equal aperture opening flipped on its head with the perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like humility really is that antidote to the arrogance, right? Because humility requires self and others. You can't exclude one or the other. It really is that I'm on the ground here with everybody and I can perceive my role, what my needs and desires, their role, their needs and desires. I can understand all of it. And I think from a relatively objective standpoint, I don't ever feel like when I'm in humility, it's like overly emotional or charged. It's just very like, oh, this is the role that I played. This is what it looked like. I can understand how it was received by this person. This is how they contributed. I can understand why I received them that way. And it's very like
Yep.
objective.
Yep.
So just like kind of naming maybe some of these markers. If you are someone who's like trying to find your middle, like where do you feel neutral? And that's probably your sweet spot. Like, oh, okay, so for me, if I'm really, really selfish, self-full in my morning, I can be so generous through the rest of my day, like so fucking generous. If in my morning, I literally spend 3 or 4 hours just doing me. I have a joy practice in there. I don't talk to anybody unless I really want to. Like it's all my free flow state. And I make sure I get up early enough and go to bed early enough that I have this time and space before I go be of service to other people. I used to, first thing when I wake up, respond to the outside world constantly, whether that was text messages, emails, hopping right on my computer, like just immediately going to work, just constantly like my whole existence is about serving other people. And then I would at night try to cram in the me time, but it was too late. It was just too fucking late. Like I didn't even have enough juice to pour into my own cup. And I was just in that for years and years and years and years and years. Like it's literally taken me until this year, if I'm like really, really brutally honest. I've had starts and stops and different versions of this, but this year's the most consistent I've been with my self-fullness. And yay, woo!
Yeah.
That really has come from me continually falling back into and polarizing towards martyrdom, and then being willing to see the ways in which that's actually destructive and damaging and not a glorified thing to be doing, because it's polarizing, it's divisive. If it's polarizing, it's divisive. So if it's on one extreme or the other, it's causing division, and that ain't fucking unity. So whoever told you selflessness to the extreme creates peace doesn't know what they're talking about, or is hijacking your mind for their own purposes. Cough cough the church.
All right, that sounds like the episode. I mean, actually, though, I feel like you just that was a solid outro right there. That was really good.
Oh my god, yeah, no, I'm in this whole moment of like, well, I was actually it's just beautiful because Meli was like, I think we need to talk about when selfishness is okay. And I was like, I feel like I would love to talk about that like right now, because I'm in this like moment right now where I'm like, wait, I am single. I have no kids. I don't have any like real ties to anything. Is now okay for me to be selfish? And it's taken me 9 months of this year to go, yeah, I can do that. Like, even I was telling you, Meli, I just recently started like actually like trying to date again. And I got all in my head because I was like, I've been on 2 dates with this woman, and I was like, I need to have all the answers for her, and I need to know everything. So, because I don't want to hurt her, and blah, blah, blah. Like, I was already going to like, what does she need? What are her experiences going to be? How is she perceiving me? Does she have feelings for me? Do I need to tend to her heart? Like, I'm like already going into those places. And I caught myself and I was like, Liv, what do you want? What do
Mm-hmm.
you need?
Mm-hmm.
You worry about that. You are being honest. You are being transparent. You are moving slowly. You are being your fucking word. Stop worrying about the other person. Let them worry about them. You worry about you. And at the point that you feel like you can't trust them to be honest, then you can just cut that off. So you don't have to do the people pleasing and the tending and the caretaking. Only spend time with people that you trust to
Yep.
know themselves well enough to speak their desires. And then I don't have to get confused. And so it's like all these like nuanced places where I'm like, wait, I'm allowed to be selfish about that. Oh, I'm allowed to be selfish about that. Like even in my breakup, I felt so guilty to not be giving him my time and attention, and taking a break and not giving him my time and attention. Holy moly, I feel so much better. And now I have more resources to be more supportive and helpful to other people, because I
Yep.
have more resources to be supportive and helpful to myself.
Yep. Yeah. I think that we should get into the when of
Mm-hmm.
it being okay to be selfish and what that looks like and what that does for us and the people around us. This is something that I think is very applied and important to distinguish. And I don't think it's necessarily so much embedded in the what is okay and what's not, but it's more embedded in the what is your intention and where are you coming from, right? That's what it is for
Mm-hmm.
me. And this is also what Lyola was talking about in what she was saying about tantra practices, where it's like there's no right or wrong in any of it. It's just, is it aligned with what's true for you? And what's true for you doesn't actually have to do with another, getting anything out of another person, right? It's like if I'm you know, because somebody could argue, like, well, I'm authentically wanting this person to invite me to this party. And it's like, well, that's not an authentic desire, because that's not coming from within, right? You're trying to control an outcome. That's not authentic. If you're trying to control an outcome, it's not authentic. So it's like, maybe the authenticity is, I would like to connect with this person, right? And if that leads to them inviting me to the party, great. But if it doesn't, that's okay, right? there's there's that check that I think we have to make with ourselves, and I have to do this with myself all the time. It's like, when I'm moving through the world and I'm like choosing what to do, what not to do, how to be, how not to be, I have to check with myself, like, am I doing this because I want something to be a certain way, or I want something from somebody else, or am I choosing this because this is what feels real and in service of being the most me I can be? What do you think, Mama? Or just is when is it okay in your world? Like, what would you add to that?
I think the self check-in and the self-assessment is really, really important. And I do think understanding your why and your intention and where that shit's coming from. And you're not going to get it right every single time. Like sometimes you'll show up a little more arrogant, selfish than you meant to, and that's okay. um, I think the thing that I might add to that is it's been easy for me to do this. So I have to imagine that's true for other people. Overlooking that your basic needs are being met. I will overthink places where it's so obvious that I'm going to use the word should, even though I'm not typically a should person, that I should take care of myself because it's like, am I tired? Am I exhausted? Am I genuinely exhausted because I'm just not getting a good quality of sleep, or I've been working more than I've been resting? Am I actually genuinely exhausted? Yeah, okay, maybe I get to be selfish right here, right now, because my body is literally depleted. It literally doesn't have what it needs to
Mm-hmm.
function. That's
Yeah.
a basic need that I get to prioritize filling for myself. Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Do I need movement? How is my heart? Do I feel repressed and unseen? And like there's energy that needs to move. So maybe I do need to take some space for myself so I can clear some things out. Like, is my nervous system literally feeling burnt out? Like, if I
Mm-hmm.
have to hear one more person's feedback about how I'm not doing it right, I won't have capacity because I'm fucking burnt out, burnt out, burnt out. Like if we can also just come back to like, are my very basic needs being met? I've discovered 9 out of 10 times that's actually what I need is I'm not prioritizing even my basic needs. And so now I'm feeling like I'm getting in this loop of, I don't know if you get stuck in this, but when I get into this like martyr people pleaser loop where I really victimize myself, it's because I'm trying to show up at my full capacity, and I feel like I should be at my full capacity and I know what I'm capable of and blah, 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 blah. But I'm failing because I'm not actually taking the time to be self full with myself and meet my basic fucking needs. And
Yep.
I do think that there are some basic needs for people in like the emotional, mental, nervous system space that do vary quite a bit. So, like, I'm someone who needs a lot of alone time. I know so most of the people in my life don't. They don't. They can take a little bit and they're good. They can just do maybe a couple hours a week. I need like a significant amount, or I'm actually not operating optimally. And I used to feel so guilty about that. And it's taken me almost 34 years to be like, actually, I love you so much and I want to show up for you excellently. And I can tell you right now, I'm going to be a turd compared to what I'm capable of. If you could just give me 4 hours and I will be back here and I will come with my pom poms and I will glitter you and I will just love you up. And it'll be high, high, high quality, low quantity, because that's what I can offer. Those are like the checks that I do for myself, are like really the basic needs thing. And 9 out of 10 times when those are good, and I'm going to argue fun and play are a basic human need that we underrepresent. And I think that that is part of what leads to the burnout.
Yeah.
But just throwing those things out there.
No, yeah, those are great things. And I think that that's a really good place to start, and to look at when it's okay for, if somebody's going through their lived experience, and they're saying, is it okay to be selfish here? Is it okay to choose me here? And I think that then the narrative that we don't even know that we're combating, that we are constantly combating, is that there is a narrative in our culture, in the society, that says that you are either at your best or your worst, right? And it's like,
Yes.
if you're not operating at 100, you're a failure. If it's not an A, it's an F. If it's not 100, you fail. If it's not first place, you lost. Like, there's this very, it's like this capitalistic mentality of like, you're either winning or you're losing. There's nowhere in between, right? If you're not a winner,
Yes.
you're a
Good
loser.
catch. Good catch, mama. That is so, I've internalized that so heavily.
Yeah. So, and that's, I think, the biggest piece of the finding the line of selfishness that's really self-full, like Liv was saying, is can I walk the line of I don't have to be at 100% all the time. And in that way, you're not limiting your life. You're not like being one, choosing to live when you're at 100% is living a two-dimensional life. Like, in a 3D world, and we're not even 3D. We're like multiple more D's than 3. You know what I mean?
We're all the D's.
So if you're trying to operate at 100%, even just, you're not even doing service to your 3D experience, which is, you know, incredibly simplistic compared to however deep we can go into different dimensions. But when I'm saying that I'm either at 100% or at 0%, there's two dimensions. I'm giving myself two dimensions to live in. It's either 100 or 0. And there's only space for me to be completely selfish or completely selfless. It's just that polar reality that we just, there's no space to actually live in as a human. That's a robot's life, right? And if we're actually honoring our human experience, then we're showing up in ways that is recognizing when we're not at 100, and realizing that that doesn't mean 0. That just means I need to take whatever measure I need to take to bring myself to the place that, to take care of myself the way that I need to take care of myself, to be okay with being at the place that I'm at right now. Not, I need to do whatever it takes to get to 100 and act that way,
Yep. Yep.
right?
That's such a good point.
It's meeting yourself where you're at. And I think that is where the narrative needs to be kind of transitioned into, is like, actually being self-full is in the highest service of yourself and the universe and everyone around you, your kids, your parents, your partners, your dogs, your cats, your friends, your family, everybody. Because if you're full, then you have a cup to give from. Like Liv was saying, if you're self full, you have a cup to give from, you have a space to share from, you have a place to have fun and play from. You can operate in that space. If your cup is empty and you're just forcing yourself to be a certain way to meet people where they are so that they can be happy, and, you know, not considering your own happiness, people feel that. I feel that when people that I love are trying to do what they think I want them to do, and it's not in
Mm-hmm.
authentic alignment with themselves. I've had that experience with Liv. I've had that experience with Matt. I've had that experience with a lot of people who are trying to do what they think I want, and then I feel weird. It's like not a good feeling for me. I'm like, I feel like there's something off here, because I can sense that there is like this showing up for the sake of showing up, and not showing up because it's coming from a full cup. It's coming from an empty cup. Like, there's a difference. You can, it could, and that's why I say the action doesn't matter, because it could be the same action. I could, you know, go to the grocery store and buy Liv's groceries for her from a space of a full cup and from a space from an empty cup. And she's going to feel the difference. She's going to know if I did that because it was something that was coming from me having taken care of myself, and me being very like fully resourced and ready to go. And she's also going to feel if it's something that I did because I'm desperate for something that I want her to give me, which is whether it's approval, whether it's just making her happy, whether it's I feel obligated, whether it's whatever. She's going to feel that. So that's why that's where the plea to be more selfish comes into play here, because if you are leaning a little bit more into the selfish side of the spectrum, and not to say full-blown selfishness, which is why I love what Liv coined as self-full, because if you can if we're all, I'm making the assumption that we're all kind of starting on the side of, like I said earlier, selflessness, martyrdom, victimhood, which is, and the call is to kind of lean more into selfishness, not so that we can become narcissists, but so
Right.
that we can land in a place of fullness and self-fullness and actually take care of ourselves so that we can show up for ourselves and the people around us.
Yeah, that was all really beautifully said, and I think that was a really good catch, the 0 or 100 thing, right? That's the people pleaser plus perfectionism, right? And I think that I know for me, so the way that that's shown up for me, those two things, is either I'll just exclude myself entirely. I'll just be like, oh, they wouldn't want to be around me, so then I'm like, hey, I can't come, or I'm so sorry, I'm busy. That used to be my big thing. It's like, oh, I'm so busy, I'm so busy. That's just what I would tell people, because like people in our culture will respect if you're busy. You know, if you actually tell them, actually, I feel really self-loathing right now, and like it's a little tougher. So that's what I used to do. So I'd either exclude myself entirely or show up obligatorily and try to mask and try to, you know, put on a happy face. And the more I've deconditioned all of that, it still gets confusing for me, like in my own internal complex, to tell where it's coming from and to tell what's going on all the time. But something I've started doing that's helpful just for anybody else who resonates with this experience is I realized a huge part of my aversion to any of these things comes from, I think, a huge core point of the programming of perfectionism and people pleasing, which is to not what I call administer disappointment. Because to administer disappointment makes you a disappointment.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't want to be disappointing to anybody. I don't want them to feel disappointment, because that means I'm a disappointment. And so that's a huge part of what those things do. And so if you look at, okay, well, what is disappointment actually? What is that actual experience? And it's unmet expectation. So I was like, okay, well, what if I reset expectations? I don't exclude myself from the space, but I'm also very honest about where I'm at and the capacity that I have, so that this person can opt in or opt out. And then if they do opt in and they still don't like how I showed up, that's on them, and they're the dick now. So now they're the ones administering the disappointment, not me. So I've
Wow.
gotten better. I mean, it's a lot. I'm telling you, the more I undo the people pleasing and the perfectionism, the more I'm like, God, this is so intricate, and it's like woven into me so intensely. I don't know how long it's going to take me to really unfurl the entire ball of yarn, but I've gotten a lot better about being like, hey, I'm excited to see you. And also, like, this is what's been going on in my week. This is where I'm at. I'm having a funky day. My energy's low. It's not a reflection of you. I've gotten better. Meli can just Meli, more than almost anyone I know, can fucking pick up energy. It takes her 2 seconds. It's like she can smell it in the air. It like wafts in before the person
I'm
even
like an
enters
energy
the
dog.
room. Yeah, no, literally, she's like, something's off. What's up? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me sit down and catch up to myself for 5 seconds. Something's off. Oh, okay. Like, it's just like she can detect stuff before I can, even half the time. So I've gotten better about just like letting her know, like, hey, I think my energy's off, but it's not you. Just being, the more you know yourself, the easier it becomes to actually communicate what's going on with people. And you can kind of start inserting
Creating
the
space
self,
for yourself.
yeah, which is a selfful act, right? And it's a selfful
Mhm.
act that's actually so kind and collaborative to the people you're
Mhm.
in the room with.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the kind of the nuanced piece between the selfful and the selfish is you're not saying fuck you, I'm gonna be how I want. You're saying you're receiving the other person, you're taking the other person into account. You're saying you're doing what's in the best interest of the energy flow between you two. So you're taking
Yep.
yourself into consideration and the other person into consideration, and you're saying, hey, this is how I'm showing up. I want to create the space for myself so I feel so that I can selfishly show up in the way that I need to. And also, I'm going to give you an opportunity to selflessly let you know and let you choose what's right for you, given the circumstance that given that you know where I'm coming from, and you can choose you can choose your adventure based on the adventure you know that I'm choosing. And then we can flow that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that, because it's, everybody has space for their own free will choice and freedom of expression. And when you do that in a space, you give that other person fucking permission to do that. And I think we all could use that permission
Yes.
repeatedly, honestly. Like there are things that like ways that Meli is and what she embodies that give me permission that maybe are something I've done before, but I can retract and be a little like, and then she does it. And I'm like, oh, right. I have that choice. I can show up
Yeah.
that way. Thank you so God for being, thank you so much for being permission for me to do this.
That's
Um,
such a good point.
yeah. Yeah.
Such a
You,
good point.
these people that you love, if you feel trapped in that kind of prison, they might be trapped in the same fucking prison. And so it is actually selfless of you to be self-full and demonstrate that self-love is okay, self-compassion is okay, self-grace is okay. These are things that are accessible and ought to be prioritized, not at the expense of the collective, but in tandem with the collective.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's so good. I really, yeah, that was that. Yeah, I actually don't have anything to say about that. That was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the thing. That's the landing point. I love where this came to with the self-fullness, because that is the space where selfishness and selflessness can meet in the middle, and you can take care of yourself and those around you through I think it's worth noting that the filter is through you, though. So it's like you take care of other people through your filter. So the ways that you take care of other people have to check out with caring for self first. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's got to come through that way. If you're filtering it the other way, it's going to all be fucked up.
Yep.
If
It's
you're like, oh, I want
backwards.
to do this for this person, and yeah, okay, that's fine with me. You could get away with that at times, but it's a slippery slope. You're gonna run into some walls pretty easily in that space. Whereas if you filter everything through, this feels good for me. Ah, I can extend to them in this way. There's never gonna be a wall there. It's just gonna be a flow.
I think that's really beautiful because one of the things that I've been thinking about this whole episode actually is you can't give something you don't have, right? So like this chapstick that I'm holding, I can give this to you because I have it. If I go, "Hey Melly, you want some chapstick?" and you go, "Yeah." And then I'm like, "Okay, well, go find some."
Yeah. Yes.
You know what I
That's
mean?
so true.
Like you can
That's so
only
true.
you can
Yes.
only give something you have, which is where that saying you can't pour from an empty cup comes from.
Yep.
So
Yep.
what we're arguing is you can't actually give of yourself truly and generously and free of strings attached if your cup is not full.
Right.
In fact, what Melly's talking about when you're trying to control an outcome and or you are giving without actually being resourced to give is you're giving to get. So it
Yep.
means that your giving comes with a string attached. And a
Yep.
lot of times the cost to the person you're giving to is that they become a villain in your story. And that's
Mm-hmm.
so shitty. To villainize someone for receiving something you freely offered sucks. And then you are doing this really disgusting behavior of victimizing yourself. And I'm
Yep.
saying that harshly as someone who's done that so many times. I still keep catching my giving to get. And actually, one of the things that I've mentioned multiple times on this podcast that I see in myself now, and I swear to God, none of this was done consciously. And now that I see it, I had to go through embarrassment and disgust and all the feelings about myself. But in my long term partnerships, I actually crave an immense amount of independence in my partnerships. And I am terrified that I can't be a strong, independent woman like me and also get the love of a partner. So, what I've done subconsciously is really put that people pleaser perfectionist thing together in this cocktail where I really focus on for the first like year and a half we're together, it's all your genius and your desires and what you want, like to the point where I didn't even know my talents or gifts, didn't know my desires, didn't know any of that shit. I'm like just getting clued into it now for myself because I spent my whole life worried about everybody else. So then I jump into these relationships and I am pouring from my cup, pouring from my cup, pouring from my cup. And the only thing that's filling it back up is them seeing me see them. It's really masturbatory.
Which
It's
is
not
giving to
cute.
get. Yeah.
It's giving to get, right? And I'm not perceiving it that way because the truth of my heart is I want this person to be their greatest and to feel excellent. And I want to hype them up and I want them to have all their dreams. Like there's truth in that. And then there's these strings, martyrdom, essentially, victimization. There's strings that, well, because I'm doing this all for you, you're going to offer me the same thing.
Yep.
because I'm doing this for you, you're going to see me and you're going to see how amazing I am and how valuable I am, and you couldn't possibly throw me away. Well, let me tell you, been thrown away all 3 times, so it doesn't fucking work. And now, actually, actually, now that I see that, I can see the ways in which I'm actually looking for the wrong characteristics in a partner, because I'm actually seeking some, I'm actually looking for myself. But me is
Mm-hmm.
here. And if I give myself love, I actually don't need a partner to be myself. I don't need a partner for permission. I don't need any of those things. I could choose it, but I haven't actually truly embodied that before. I haven't truly embodied what if my cup is so fucking full that I could walk in the desert of relationships for years and be like, nah, that one's not worth it because my cup's already full and I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose water on this deal. I'm going to lose water on this deal. And unless it's bringing me more, I don't need it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And that's you that's Liv's process right there, baby. She is on the path to relationship with self and finding everything that she needs in that way, and that is her self-full act. And yeah, I think
Yes.
this is a good point, a good
Yeah.
intro to your
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So, just to give everybody some context, I was supposed to get married on September 13th of 2024. So from the recording date, this would be a week ago, probably 2 or 3 weeks by the time this podcast goes live. And I didn't want it to be a day that was marked by lack and sorrow and despair and what had been taken from me. I didn't want it to be a victim-y day. I wanted it to be a day of rebirth, a new beginning, a reclamation. I just wanted it to be something that felt liberating for Liv. So my mom called it Liberate Liv Day. And I was like, that's great. I love that. And I'm a huge Friday the 13th fan. This is why I chose a Friday the 13th for my wedding. It's a deeply divine, sacred, feminine day. The first time I got married was also on a Friday the 13th. So I love that. And I didn't want a Friday the 13th to be icky. So I thought, how can I alchemize this? And I was like, you know what? What if I just fucking write myself vows today and I make myself some promises about how I'm going to show up for myself and love myself in the face of everything that I've learned. You
self-full
know,
act, baby.
yes, a selfful act. And I just, the people, I haven't shared this with a ton of people, but the people I have shared it with said that it was very inspiring. I had one woman say it was provoking in some ways that were beneficial for her. And then I realized we don't really have a whole lot of templates for self-fullness that isn't skewed toward arrogance, right? And negativity, which is why I think we perceive them in a binary. So I want to share them in the event that they're helpful and inspiring and maybe give people a template for the kind of love you can offer yourself. You don't need to
Mm,
wait for somebody else to come sweep you off your feet. You can do it for yourself. And then if another person does sweep you off your feet, it's 10 times more glorious.
so good.
Okay. I may cry. My voice may be shaky. This is energetically intense for me. Okay. My vows to me. Today, I thought I'd be marrying another human. I thought I'd be trekking off into a new adventure of wifehood, togetherness, and possibly motherhood. Today, I am grateful that is not the case. Instead, I've been given the opportunity and privilege to reignite passion and excitement for the journey I have always been on and will always be on, the epic experience of being Liv. Liv is an incredible human, and if I am honest, I haven't always treated her as such. Perhaps unintentionally, perhaps ignorantly, but truthfully nonetheless. So today, instead of making vows to someone else, I choose to make vows to myself, to raise the bar and standard of what's possible for me in love, in laughter, in life. My dearest Liv, this is for you. You are the breath in my lungs. You are the sparkle in my eyes. You are the radiance of my beauty, the lilt in my love notes, the sweetness in my smile. You are everything I could ever hope to be. I know I haven't always showed up for you and been there when you needed me most. But please know, precious one, it was only for lack of knowing. Knowing what you need, knowing what you want, knowing what you dream, how you feel, what you see. But ever so patiently you've taught me these things, and ever so gracefully you've forgiven the stings of negative self-talk, of limiting beliefs, of externalizing self-worth, of self-betrayal. Through all of this, you've stayed open, generous, hopeful, resilient, soft, and empowered. In learning these things through you, here are my vows to you. I vow to hold you tight and never let you go. I vow to support your dreams no matter how wild and impossible they seem. I vow to help clean up your messes and take breaks to enjoy play. I vow to show up even when I don't know how. I vow to treat your heart, mind, and body as precious and sacred. I vow to honor your no's with enthusiasm and your yeses with celebration. I vow to listen to you the first time and take action accordingly. I vow to trust you when it hurts. I vow to trust you when it feels good. I vow to forgive you infinitely and wait for you eternally. I vow to put you first. I vow to remind you how beautiful and courageous you always are. I vow to call you out with humor and compassion when your ego spins out. I vow to stay curious, practice patience, and treat every day as an adventure. I vow to love you fiercely, no matter what, every second of every day. I vow to know all of you deeply and with devotion. Most importantly, and perhaps what matters most, is I vow to be my word to you in all things and all ways. It is the single greatest honor of my life to love you, Liv. Thank you for choosing me and for letting me choose you. I love you and I really fucking like you. Here with you, me. Thank you for letting me share that.
That was so good, Mama. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you,
Yes.
everyone. That's 9 months of a breakup and lessons learned talking, plus all the 33 years before that, but still.
It's such a great, embodied example of how we can be more selfful and
Mm-hmm.
really love ourselves more and the things that we can do for ourselves. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, on that note, we'll let everybody marinate with that and we'll review our question, which is what is our question?
When is it okay to be selfish? When is it okay to be selfish? Yeah, there
When
you
is it
go.
okay to be selfish? What's the liminal space?
I think there's a few, so I'll name one and you probably have thought of a different one because that seems to happen, which is dope. For me, the liminal space is doing that check in with yourself before you're just like reacting and giving, selfless, like taking that pause to go, am I actually resourced to give this abundantly, or am I going to do this, deplete myself, strings attached, create resentment, all of that shit?
That's a
Yeah.
great liminal space. Yeah, I feel like that's like a microcosm liminal space. And then like the macrocosm liminal space is coming out of the martyrdom and the victimhood and the selflessness and realizing, oh, wait, maybe there's a different way here. And like swinging all over the place and becoming really defiant and angry and finding your middle ground and what's right for you and in caring for yourself and those around you at the same time.
Beautiful. Agreed.
And the magic?
The magic is, to me, literally being someone who's participating in creating a truly healed world where we are all full and we are all pouring out of our cups all at the same time. We're all generous, we're all receiving, we're all giving.
Yes.
Just
Being
constant flow.
self-full. Being
Being
self-full.
self-full,
That
that's
is
the
your
magic.
greatest service to the universe.
It's literally no one else can do it. It's your number one job because no one else can do it.
Yes. No one else can do it. It is your number one fucking job. Do your job, bitches.
Yeah. No, but actually, if shit's not going well in your world, you're probably not doing your fucking job. Take better care of yourself.
Like, follow, subscribe, comment, ask us questions, say what's up. We love you. Follow us at babe.philosophy.
Later, babes. Later,
Babe.
babes. Thank you for listening to Babe Philosophy.
If you enjoyed the show, please like, rate, and subscribe wherever you listen and follow us on Instagram at babe.philosophy.
Later, babes.